Hello, this is Dr. Dan. Well, I thought before you began your week 5 assignment and critiqued your second article, I would talk about the concept of critical thinking. And the reason why I thought it would be important to talk about it this week is because this is now your second assignment where you're critically analyzing and critiquing an article, but it's the first time that you will really dig a bit deeper into that article. The first time we did this, we focused more on APA style, whereas this time we are going to look at some very specific concepts, and you're going to look for some very specific information. When analyzing literature, or even when watching videos and when reading the paper, whatever it might be, critical thinking is a very important concept, especially for doctoral students and graduate students in general. And the reason why is because perhaps many people simply either not just believe what they read, but do not think beyond what they're reading and perhaps even look for information that's not available, not just what information is available. As an example, when you're critiquing an article during a literature review, you may read a lot of literature that supports what the author is trying to prove or what they're trying to demonstrate, what their hypothesis is. But perhaps there is no evidence that is provided that shows limitations or that shows perhaps why a relationship may not exist. So in that case, the information is not there. So for the average person, they might say, hey, look at that. Look at all this evidence that supports this author's claims. But someone that's really critically thinking will focus on also what is not there. And it may very well be that there is a ton of literature out there that does not support that particular point of view. Perhaps one of the most common topics in this day and age is, for instance, the concept of people causing global warming. I love using that example because most people should understand, if they're explained this, that any studies that have been done are correlational designs. There cannot be a experimental design because there's no way to have, for instance, a control group. You cannot have two planets, Earth, for instance, and control one and do something with the other. So they're correlational studies. However, whenever evidence is presented, it's so many times presented as causal evidence for the things that are happening. So I always like using that example because when it comes to ethics, correlational research has been used to basically impact people globally and the decisions they make, the money that's spent on certain aspects of their lives, on public policy, and so on. I could go on and on. So I thought that's kind of interesting. More closer to home, as they say here, what we are reading, critical thinking can apply as well. So as an example, when I was even reading the text, I thought it was kind of interesting that an author that is discussing things such as whether it be how to critically think about information, how to make claims that are limited based on the type of research that's conducted, yet this author themselves is making some claims that are, I wouldn't necessarily even say unethical, but can be a bit deceiving. So as an example, on page 107, the author's talking about how some people criticize scientific experiments, claiming they're useless because they're artificial and not like real life. I would argue that point, saying that as an industrial organizational psychologist, I definitely understand the limitations of scientific experiments, and that's the more common viewpoint. I know very few people, if any, well really I don't know any people that might say that experiments are useless unless, because they're not applied to a real world or not conducted in a real life setting. But it is fairly commonly known that there can be limitations to experimental studies, and that's what's important to understand. And then secondly, I thought it was kind of interesting that the author went off on a very much of a tangent and used specific names of leaders in a certain political party to talk about how funding should not be provided for scientific research because the scientific research does not have value. When the reality is the message of those leaders was not so much on that it does not have value, but rather should public funding be going towards research, when in the grand scheme of things there are perhaps other issues that money should be going towards. And those are two very different discussions. So the reason why I brought up that example as well as the other is, as a critical thinker, I begin to, every time I'm reading, especially when I'm reading academic literature, I am sort of naturally looking for arguments and looking for information that's presented that might be trying to make me perhaps feel a certain way, rather than simply using evidence to support certain claims. In these two examples, I was trying to basically, the author was trying to make me feel a certain way towards, let's say, public funding going towards scientific literature, and I should say scientific research, when really what we're focusing on here is random sampling, random assignment, and so on. So with that said, I will just conclude that once again, my whole point of this discussion is to really work hard during your program, not just in this class, not just for this assignment, but really try to work hard on your critical thinking skills. It is so very important to develop those, because as you transition from your coursework into your own research, you need to be critically thinking about all of the steps that you're taking and all of the stages of the research process, to make sure that they're well thought out, that you are considering all of the implications that you can have on others, and so on. I hope this helped, and I hope you enjoy your Week 5 assignment, and I look forward to our next discussion.